love open farmland like this, surrounded by forestry. I think it looks quite beautiful. But sadly it's getting rarer and rarer as a lot of agricultural land's being left to kind of go to wasteland and then concreted over for all these new claustrophobic housing estates. Some clumps of bracken still growing, which is surprising. I don't know if it's because it's a different variety or because they're a bit sheltered here. But it's nice to see, because I do love bracken. And the bracken dying off always is a sign that winter's really setting in, and just like bracken growing and sprouting up is a sign that summer's coming. And it really doesn't seem that long ago that the bracken was sprouting up, because I was really waiting for it this year. And now it's already dying off. So the start of December as I'm filming this. See, most of it's all dying off on this side of the path. But then on this side, it's all growing still. This is where I camped out in the summer, so I thought I'd come back here just for a kind of nice comparison. You can see how different it looks between summer and winter. I'm going to try and get some of the same shots, like of me walking in the summer. It's through that huge bracken. It looked very lush and jungle-like, whereas now, as you can see behind me, it's all just brown and dead. But before I do anything, I'm going to get something to eat, because I'm quite hungry, before I set up the tent. As usual, I have my little mini stove. I'm sure you've all seen before by now, if you've seen any of my videos. And I've got an all-day breakfast I'm going to put in there. Squeezed it all into the bottom of the pouch, into the water there, just to warm it up. Ground sheet to kneel on. Now while I'm waiting for that to cook, I should regale you with tales of eBay, because I get my meals ready to eat, 24-hour ration packs, whatever you want to call them, from a site called MRE Mountain. But I mentioned it in a previous video, and some people were saying, oh, you can get them cheaper on eBay or in store. Sadly, in store isn't an option for me, because I don't have any army surplus stores anywhere near me. So the cost of me driving to the nearest town or city that has one to pick up a pouch just isn't cost effective, so I have to get them offline. So I looked on, the only place I could find any cheaper than where I get them is eBay. And it was only sort of £4 cheaper, but I thought I'd try it. So I ordered a meal pack that sounded good to me, because basically they have a list of all the different menus they have available. There's about 18 different menus you could pick from. So I picked the one I wanted, got it in the post, and it arrived. And firstly, it wasn't in a bag. Like the ones that I normally get are all kind of sealed in a bag together, which makes it easier just to transport and put in the rucksack. Not the end of the world that it was all loose in a cardboard box, but I still prefer it being in a bag like I normally get. But on top of that, it was a completely different menu to the one I had ordered. So I contacted the seller and I said, you've sent me the wrong menu. And the thing is, it wasn't even a menu that was listed on the eBay listing. It was just a completely random menu that had somehow been sent to me, completely different from what I wanted. And the guy I bought it off of just replied saying, oh, well, sorry, well, I hope you enjoy it anyway. And I was like, well, no, there isn't anything in here that I would normally eat. There's nothing in that pack that appealed to me that I would want to eat. So he then said, oh, well, I can give you kind of 30% of your money back. And once again, I was like, well, no, because you've sent me the completely wrong thing. And in the end, I had to get eBay involved, and they did refund me the whole cost of it, and I didn't have to send it back either. So I've now got some ration packs that don't appeal to me, but I guess, you know, in an emergency, or if I've got someone else along with me, I can give it to them. But yeah, it was a big pain in the arse, really. So yeah, I'll stick to just getting it from a proper website. So like I say, going into stores isn't cost effective for me, and eBay is too unreliable. Not that I'm knocking eBay, I buy loads of stuff off eBay and it's normally really good, but when it comes to these ration packs, yeah, it was a big pain in the ass. I had wanted to come out and do a video in November, but on the week that I was free and I could have done it, I had some stressful stuff come up that I had to deal with, which I'll get into later. But I do quite like coming out in December, so it's not the end of the world. Right, now for my tale of woe from November. So I got myself a job as a delivery driver just to make a bit of extra cash temporarily, and because normally I don't like working for other people. I kind of live my life on the peripheral of society, and that's how I like it. But I thought, you know, delivery driver job, you're pretty much on your own a lot of the time, just driving around listening to true crime podcasts. It's quite a nice way of making a bit of money. So I got this delivery driver job. I was out doing a delivery one night, pulled over trying to find the address, when all of a sudden a police officer pulls up alongside me, and I open the window and he says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "No, I'm just doing a delivery." And he goes, "Oh, have you got insurance to do that?" I said, "Yeah." So he then pulls up behind me and parks and comes back to my window on foot and says, "Oh, well, I pulled you over because the light above your license plate is out." Which was strange because he hadn't pulled me over. I was already pulled over to do the delivery, and he pulled up alongside me asking if he could help me, which I don't think is standard procedure if you've pulled someone over. But anyway, he then starts asking me about the insurance, and I said, "Yeah, I'm covered by the company I work for's business insurance." And he said, "Oh, that doesn't sound right to me." And he checked my license, and my personal insurance isn't business insurance because I don't need it. It's, you know, I'm covered by the company I work for's insurance. But he wasn't having any of it, so within minutes of him pulling up alongside me, he was seizing my vehicle. And this is at 11:30 at night, miles and miles and miles from where I live. I was left completely stranded, no vehicle. I had to phone up my 70-year-old father to come and rescue me, basically, for doing absolutely nothing wrong. And then the next day I had to pay £150 to get my car back, once again for doing absolutely nothing wrong. And this obviously seemed like a job's worth type. I think he just needed to look like he'd done some work that day, so decided I was an easy target. And I'm now in the process of lodging a complaint and trying to get my £150 back, which I don't think I will. You know what they're like, that won't go anywhere. But if nothing else, I want to waste their time and money having to deal with me, petty as it may sound. But it's just unbelievable. Just going about my business, doing absolutely nothing wrong, completely legally, and within minutes you can have your car seized from you in the middle of the night, leaving you stranded, and then have to pay £150 for the privilege. And imagine if I know gender shouldn't really matter, but imagine if I'd been a young woman in that situation. You've got this lone police officer who's pulled up alongside you and taken your vehicle for no reason whatsoever. You're miles and miles from home, stranded in the middle of the night. That would be quite frightening. I mean, it was distressing enough for me, let alone a young woman, especially after the actions of Officer Wayne Couzens earlier this year, which, for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know how big a story it was outside the UK. It was basically the UK's equivalent of the Gabby Petito case in America, that girl that went missing. That was a huge news story. A girl in, I think it was March this year, was walking home one night, and an off-duty police officer stopped her and arrested her for breaching COVID regulations, got her in his car, handcuffed her, drove her out into the woods, violated her, killed her, set fire to her body, and then a few days later took his family there for a picnic. So, considering that happened this year, for then a lone officer to just take someone's vehicle in the middle of the night, leaving them stranded for no reason, in my opinion, is disgusting. And it's just unbelievable that you can't just go about your business. And we see this sort of thing happening all the time over the last year, because the police have been having a field day with COVID restrictions that they can go around harassing innocent people because they're, you know, going for a walk along the beachfront or sitting on a park bench or whatever. No, not all officers are like it, but there are more and more Jobsworths types in the police force now who just want easy, low-hanging fruit, basically, that they can exert some authority over. That's why they've loved all these COVID restrictions. On a weekly basis now in the UK, there are stories coming out of police corruption, misconduct, and generally vile behaviour. You know, far worse than me just getting my car taken for the night. There was a story about two girls got murdered, and two of the police officers on the scene of the crime decided to take selfies with the two murdered girls' bodies and share around on WhatsApp for a laugh, which is not only a really disgusting thing to do, and must have been awful for the family that their daughters were treated with such little respect by the police, but it also could have contaminated the crime scene and helped the murderer get away with it, because the police were, you know, getting close to the bodies just to take selfies. There was another instance of a guy who, I think he's terminally ill, and on his bucket list was to pull a Mooney to a speed camera. So he did, you know, he just flashed his bum to a speed camera. Didn't hurt anyone. You know, most people would probably just find that amusing. But because it offended the police, their reaction was to send 6 people round to this terminally ill guy's house to rugby tackle him to the ground. 6 officers on this one terminally ill guy in his back garden, who was no threat to anyone, who hadn't committed any kind of serious crime. And then you look at the serious crimes that do get a blind eye turned to them, it's just unbelievable. But that's where we are in the UK now. And the police made it really difficult for me to prove that I had insurance, because I got a certificate. I tried to go in the next day to show them, and the station I went to get my car back from, they weren't interested in taking evidence that I had insurance. I tried other police stations, and a lot of police stations are closed now to the public. I don't know how long that's been going on for. I don't know if that's since COVID, that they're, you know, much like a lot of GPs now who act like they're retired, have just used it as an excuse to close more and more stations, or if that's something that's been going on for a while now. I phoned up the local police, and they were actually seemed angry at me. The woman I spoke to, her sergeant shouted at her, and then she then passed that on to me, that I have to wait for them to contact me about the ticket I'd been given. But if I wait for them to contact me, it would have either been for them to drop the case, which they wouldn't have because I hadn't had a chance to show them my evidence yet that I had insurance, or it would have been to give me a fine of £300 and 6 points on my licence, in which case I would have then had to refuse to pay it and potentially take it to court. Which seems silly when I could just go in there and show my documents, but they really made it difficult for me to do that. And then finally I got through to a station, and an officer who was actually helpful and seemed sympathetic even. He said it shouldn't have happened, and some of these officers need information drummed into their heads, or hammered into their heads were his words. So I finally got through to a decent one, but 5 out of the 6 officers I dealt with all treated me with contempt. I mean, they have a real attitude problem. And I didn't go in there shouting the odds. I went in there just politely, you know, calmly, trying to say, look, I've got the insurance, this is all unfair. And they do not care. They don't give a damn. They really don't. They don't care about how it affects you, how it can ruin your life. You know, I can take the £150 on the chin. I don't want to, out of principle, but, you know, it's not the end of the world for me. But for some people, that, you know, who are doing, you know, say they're doing a part-time job delivering or whatever, just to try and make a little desperate bit of extra money to make ends meet, and then they've got to pay £150 for nothing. That could really screw up a lot of people. It's disgusting, but they don't give a damn. They do not care at all. The attitude that I got from so many of those officers is unbelievable. We're living in a really over-policed society, but it's only over-policed when it comes to petty non-crimes. I was watching a film called V for Vendetta on Bonfire Night. It was a really good film to watch on Bonfire Night. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's basically a comic booky version of 1984. Even John Hurt's in it. But watching that film, it was worrying seeing the similarities to modern day Britain. You know, we've got a government who are trying to control us through fear tactics. media that lie and manipulate the truth and what information gets out there, police that abuse their powers, people getting dragged from their homes because they've said the wrong thing. All this stuff's in V for Vendetta, you know, this 1984-esque future Britain, and it's all happening now. It's really worrying. Like I said, normally I try and live kind of on the peripheral of society. I'm not massively social anymore. I used to be when I was younger, but now I just prefer my own company a lot. I live kind of in the middle of nowhere. I try and make money myself without working for other people most of the time. I didn't used to watch any mainstream media, mainstream news, because a lot of it is just spreading negativity. So many news stories you'd see, and on topical debate shows, and even YouTubers do it as well. You know, it's stuff that makes you roll your eyes and think, oh God, the world's gone mad, it's all terrible. But actually, realistically, if you hadn't seen that news report, that YouTuber reporting on it, that topical debate show talking about it, you'd probably never encounter that in your life. So it's just spreading negativity onto you that you don't need and isn't relevant to you. And that's why I try not to get into kind of topical stuff in my videos, because I don't want to spread the negativity onto you guys. I don't want to start talking about things I've heard and seen that disgust me or upset me, and then spread it onto you guys who otherwise wouldn't have been aware of these things. I try and keep my videos kind of light and fun, but it's getting harder and harder to do that. And part of it's my own fault, because last year, I think a lot of people last year started to watch some of the mainstream news just to keep track of what was going on when the COVID kind of first started. So I was watching mainstream news articles on YouTube, which then meant that more current news and topical debate stuff was being recommended to me, and I'd click on it and think, oh, what's this? And then it's kind of exposed me to more negativity, and I've definitely noticed it. It's definitely had an effect on me psychologically. I've definitely been in a more negative mindset this year because I've opened myself up to it. So I think a New Year's resolution for me is going to be back to shutting it all out. But the media, I think, are well aware that these disaster porn that they report on has got them more viewers, because, you know, mainstream media, terrestrial type TV in the UK is really dying off. In 10-20 years time it won't be here anymore, and they're aware of that. But I think they realised that, oh, our viewing ratings went up during COVID, so now every few weeks they're trying to find a new disaster that they can report on. Global warming, race relations, a completely manufactured fuel shortage a couple of months ago in the UK. There was a very slim amount of fuel stations that were a bit short on fuel. So the media reported this fuel shortages. That made people start to panic buy, and once you get a few people panic buying, it escalates, because other people see that there are people panic buying all the fuel, and then they think, well, hang about, I need fuel to get to work, I need fuel to get the kids to school, to go shopping, whatever, and then they have to panic buy, and everyone panic bought, and there was a fuel shortage for a few weeks, when actually most fuel stations were getting the same amount of fuel delivered that they normally would have. It wasn't that there was a shortage of fuel, it was just that people were buying more fuel. People were buying 24 hours worth of fuel in the space of 3 or 4 hours from these fuel stations, so they were running out of fuel. All completely orchestrated by the media, because they wanted something to, you know, a disaster, an emergency to report on to get the viewers in. Something else that I do want to talk about is insulate Britain, or infuriate Britain as I like to call them. These people who are, I think they want free insulation or something. I'm not entirely sure, their message is a bit jumbled. But they've never heard of the saying that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So to get their point across and try and get everyone to kind of meet their demands, they have been gluing themselves to major roads in the UK and holding everyone up. To try and, you know, be heroes and raise everyone's awareness to global warming and insulation or something. But what they don't realise is that even if they've got a good point, no one's going to hear that good point, because everyone's just pissed off at them. But you can't get across your message if you've got a positive message if you're then annoying everyone, because all anyone's going to see is red. All anyone's going to see is, you annoying arseholes, you've stopped me from getting my kids to school, you've stopped me from getting to work, getting to hospital appointments or whatever. And you can't expect people to worry about larger problems like, you know, global warming, whatever, if you're creating immediate problems for them to deal with. If someone's driving and they're trying to get their kids to school so they can get to work, so they can earn money to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads, that's an immediate problem that you have caused for them. So they're not then going to have time to worry about, oh, insulation to stop global warming or whatever, because they've got an immediate problem that you have created for them. So you're completely distracting them from being able to care about the issue that you're bringing up. You completely undermine themselves with their actions and their foolishness. But kind of like V for Vendetta, I also see similarities with Judge Dredd, which is another kind of dystopian future fiction. Now the movies tend to just focus on the action aspects, but in the comics and that, there's more of a kind of satire of society and things like megacities, which in this kind of Judge Dredd future, megacities are basically where all the towns and cities have grown so much they've all just merged together into one huge megacity, and there's pretty much no countryside or natural environment left, and that's happening in the UK. They're just everywhere you go. There are new council estates being built, new housing estates being built, which are really claustrophobic. And this is something that I've noticed since I've been doing the deliveries jobs. I've been going down a lot of estates and things that I would never normally drive down, and they are so terribly designed. I mean, they're building twice as many houses as you know as they should do on the amount of land, so they're all really claustrophobic on top of each other. You can't maneuver, you can barely get two cars down the road at the same time, inadequate parking for everyone, so there's cars all along the road as well, no gardens. And these are quite nice houses. It's not like they're shithole estates, you know, they're quite nice houses that seem as if they're designed for kind of lower middle class people, but they're just packing them in, and it's just awful. And it's, you know, it's one of the many reasons that I like living out in the countryside and less have any desire to go to urban areas. I used to quite enjoy having weekend breaks in different towns and cities in the UK, so I quite like driving. I like going on little road trips and that. That's one of the reasons I got the delivery job as well, because I like driving around, you know, with a coffee, listening to some stuff. But yeah, that's gradually become less and less appealing, because the road systems in the UK are fucked. Like, you can't drive 20 miles in any direction without being stuck by roadworks or sent on some ridiculous diversion. More and more restrictions everywhere that seem purely designed to try and catch people out, to get money out of them. When you get into town centres, like for example, just instances I've seen, there's a town where there's a bus lane on the left and then the regular vehicle lane on the right, but then there's also a shopping kind of area on the left. And so if you're unfamiliar with that town, you would drive in there and you would think, oh, I need to get into the left-hand lane now because there's a left-hand turning there to get into this shopping area. But if you go into that left-hand lane just a second too early, there is a camera at the exact spot where they know people are going to think, I need to get in the left-hand lane to turn left here, just to catch people out. Not people who are going in the bus lane to be arseholes and to try and overtake. Just, it's a legitimate mistake people would make in that spot, and they've got a camera there just to catch people out. Another example, there was a road which for probably about 50 years now has been a regular road for cars to go down, and they all of a sudden changed it to a bus only lane. And the second they changed it to a bus only lane, they put cameras everywhere to catch people out who are going to be driving along, because for 50 years that has been a regular road for cars. Put a camera there straight away, knowing people are going to accidentally go down there, and it's almost a bottleneck. Like, if you go down there, it's very then hard to then turn around and get out of it. So people get trapped going down there, and then get, you know, the £30 fine. So the councils make it hell to get into a town centre. And then when you get there, the parking's a nightmare now. There's so many parking restrictions now that weren't there 10 years ago, which make it really awkward. And then they bleat on about the death of the high street. Well, don't make it a nightmare for people to get into the high street if you want people to shop there. But then even if you do get into the shops there, everything's twice as expensive as it is online, because I'm not sure if it's the town councils or who it is who makes the rates that the shop owners have to pay, but the rates are so high, there's no way they can compete with online, because they've got to overprice everything to make up the money that they're paying in the rates for the shops they're renting. So it's just an awful experience, really, now, to go into urban areas. On top of, like I say, all these horrible new estates that are just so claustrophobic and terribly designed. Cameras everywhere filming you. Another reason I hate going into urban areas now, because I think it's just horrible that we're being monitored. We're basically all treated like we're criminals. We're treated like we're criminals, just waiting to be caught out. We have to be filmed every moment. The second we leave our house, we have to be filmed to make sure we don't do anything wrong. we're all being encouraged to film each other. You know, more and more people now have cameras on their doorbells and cameras on their dashboard when they're driving around, and I understand why. I do completely understand why. More to protect yourself legally rather than protect yourself from crime. I think it's, you know, just so you can prove you're not doing anything wrong. If you get ridiculous accusations thrown against you, you've got to film yourself everywhere you go. So I do understand why people have dash cams and doorbell cams. Part of me wish I'd had a dash cam on when that officer harassed me the other week, but at the same time I just think it's a sad way to live, that we're just filming each other to catch each other out all the time. But what got me with the Sarah Everhard case is that afterwards the police's first reaction was, oh well, we're going to start having undercover officers go to nightclubs and bars and just follow people around to make sure they're not harassing women. Which, one, I think is a very worrying avenue to go down, if you're literally just going to have officers following people around randomly just to make sure you don't do anything wrong. That's a horrible overly police state that we'd be delving into, you know, going into there. But on top of that, it was a police officer who killed that woman. It wasn't a random member of the public who followed some woman in a nightclub. It was a police officer who abused his powers in the COVID laws, and yet your reaction to that is to deflect guilt onto us and say, oh, we're going to follow you around to make sure you don't do this sort of stuff that one of our officers did. It's unbelievable. And these kind of big institutions always do that. It's like after the whole Jimmy Savile thing came out, BBC, ever since 2013, have been on virtue signalling overdrive, desperate to try and make themselves look pure and virtuous and basically deflect guilt onto us. They're constantly, you know, BBC shows now like finger waggling at you saying you need to be better, you need to not be sexist and racist, blah blah blah. And it's only because they're trying to save face after the whole Jimmy Savile thing came out, but they deflect it onto us as if they're our moral guardians. Hollywood did the same thing after the Weinstein stuff came out, which so many people in Hollywood must have known what he was up to. There's no way that all these directors, producers, actors and actresses didn't know what was going on, but they just turned a blind eye because not their problem, they're more focused on their careers. But now that ever since the Weinstein stuff came out, once again Hollywood's gone into virtue signalling overdrive, constantly acting like they're our moral guardians and saviours. Sorry for having a bit of a rant, it's just quite cathartic. I'm not going to do negative videos like this very often. Like I say, I don't want to kind of spread negativity onto others, but so many things have wound me up this year that felt like getting off my chest. And this, I guess, is kind of an end of year review, you know, since this is coming out in December, just to go over this ridiculous year we've been through. But I do think it's worrying where society's going, as much as I try and stay out of it. You know, I try not to, but as I say, watch mainstream media and stuff. I try and live on the peripheral of society, keep out of it all. But it's getting harder and harder to ignore it because it's just spreading. And it really is worrying. And it's kind of, you know, what do you do about it? Because it's not like there's any opposing political parties you can vote for. You know, in this case, democracies can't really do anything to help us because who the hell is there to vote for? There's literally none of them. There's not a single decent party to vote for. Not any of the big ones anyway. You know, there are smaller parties you can vote for, but realistically that it never works, does it? They never get in. So what the hell do people do? But then at the same time, apparently it only takes about 3% of society to kind of rebel against something for it to be enough for governments to have to listen. And 3% doesn't sound that much. I'm sure that was the figure I heard. So if enough people do stand up to all this stuff going on, which we're going to have to at some point, you know, it just seems to be getting worse and worse, really. I've got a different temp with me this time than I normally use in these videos because it gets dark so early now. I mean, it gets dark at about 3:30, 4 o'clock time. So I need a tent that's a bit more spacious that I can relax in. The solo tent I use in summer is fine if all I'm going to be doing is sleeping in it, but if I'm going to be spending quite a lot of time in there before going to sleep, really like a nice tent I can sit up in and really relax in. So this one's quite a bit taller and bigger. This is a 3-man one, which I find is great for me and my kit to go in. It's also handy if I've got someone else with me, having a bigger tent like this. That's what I used to use a lot when I went to festivals a few years ago. And I've got my funky little light pegs that you twist the end on there, and it turns them on just to give you a little bit of extra light and help stop you from tripping over the guy lines. And actually in October, a friend and I came out here and watched Blair Witch on her portable DVD player in the tent, which is a really good film to watch at Halloween out in the woods, because there's a lot of creaking noises and things breaking and that in the background to try and kind of create an atmosphere of fear. But when you're out camping, anyone who goes out camping a lot will know you do hear a lot of creaks and things falling from trees and branches breaking in the night. So the film kind of used that to good effect, and for someone like me who actually does go out camping a lot, it just resonated with me. So it might not be the best film in the world, but it is a fun film to watch at Halloween out in the woods. But honestly, Jobsworth's types have loved this year, not just that officer I had to deal with, but some other examples. I went into B&M, it's a shop in the UK, and as you go in, there was a woman standing in front of the door, kind of herding people in one direction to the right, but where I wanted to go in the store was to the left of me, and I looked to the right, and where this woman was herding everyone to go, there was this huge bundle of people that you couldn't get through because they'd all been sort of shoved down there and they're all looking at things, whereas there was no one to the left of me, and that's where I wanted to go. So I thought I'll just go to the left. So I started walking down to the left, and this woman goes, "Can't go that way, sir, can't go that way." And I just ignored her and kept going, and she was shouting at me, going, "You can't go that way, you can't go that way." And as I was walking down there, she dived in front of me. She must have been about 60. She dived in front of me, right up close to me, and said, "You can't go this way." And I said, "Why not?" And she goes, "Oh, because of social distancing." And I said, "Well, if I go that way, I'm going to be in a huge pile up of people and not social distancing. Going this way, I wouldn't have come into contact with anyone had you not dived in front of me." And she goes, "I know, but you have to go that way." And it's like she acknowledged that my logic was sound, but she still, just because she had been given this arbitrary rule to enforce, she was like, "No, you must go this way," even though it makes no sense whatsoever. And I just ignored her and kept going. And by this point, I was not going to buy anything, and I will never shop there again. But just as up yours to her, I just carried on going, and she's still shouting at me, going, "You can't go that way, you can't go that way." Like everyone was looking because she was causing such a scene. So I just walked around and then went back out again. Like I say, I'll never shop there again. It was just ridiculous. It's unbelievable. But Jobsworth's types like that, they love it. They love having arbitrary rules that they can try and enforce. Again, I was in, I think it was Tesco's, it might have been Sainsbury's, I can't remember. But basically, the door that you go in and out of is the exact same door. But they have kind of tried to make an in and out by putting a belt there. Just a belt in between a couple of, posts to hold the belt up that's at about waist height. And I didn't even notice it when I went in. I was just kind of daydreaming that, went around. Bearing in mind, once you get in the store, you can just go wherever you like. Everyone's just kind of interacting, walking around wherever they like. There's no one-way system or anything. But then as I was going out of the store, all of a sudden I hear this voice saying, "Sir, you can't go that way. That's the entrance." And I looked around, and there was a woman sat behind a desk by the door, who once again, like this other woman, must be paid just to sit there and go, "Can't go that way. That's the in. That's the out. Go the in. Go the out. Go the in." Like they're paying these poor cows to just sit there doing this. And I looked at her, and she said again, "Oh, that's the entrance. You have to go to the exit." So I just dipped myself underneath the belt and walked out, just to kind of show her how ridiculous the whole thing was, as if the belt was going to somehow stop COVID from spreading. Like, I'd understand it if there was a big, clear plastic board there that clearly separated the entrance and the exit, but it's one big door. Everyone's like right next to each other, apart from the belt. The belt will protect us from viruses. It's just ridiculous. What is going on? And they're paying people to sit there. Don't go that way. That's the entrance. That's the exit. It's unbelievable. It's just ridiculous. And once again, it's more things that just put me off. I don't want to be herded everywhere I go, whenever I go to a built-up area. It's bad enough as it is, but with COVID, they've made it even worse now. And it's the same with, like I said earlier about all the cameras on you and more restrictions on the road. And god damn, you're just like a drone going along the set path of life that they have drawn out for you. Do not deviate from the path. Awful, awful way to live. Jesus Christ. And again, it's, you know, save the high street, support the high street. No, fuck the high street. I'm going to stay at home and order online, so I don't have to deal with this bullshit. And I lodged a complaint against B&M, even though I'd never heard anything back from it other than they acknowledged that I had made a complaint, and I'm sure it didn't go anywhere. But I do think it's important to at least voice our dissatisfaction with these sort of things, like me making the complaint against the officer who took my car, you know, and trying to get the £150 back. I know it probably won't go anywhere, but I think it's still important to try and voice these things. I don't know, I guess I'm going into old man territory. I'm just going to complain about everything and shake my fist, but Jesus. Maybe I'm just at that point where I'm just at that age that, if, you know, my dad was like it, I remember, and is my granddad, you know, they get to that point where, oh, the world's gone bloody mad. And it's the same with media, you know, so much modern media I don't like anymore. I think it's a load of crap, but maybe I'm just naturally at that age now where you're like, oh, don't make them like they used to. Well, better back in my day. You know, maybe I'm just am that kind of old man point in my life where I, you know, circle of life. Well, yeah, sorry for, you know, it's a bit of a negative video, but I have the feeling that a lot of you guys will probably feel the same way as I do about a lot of this stuff. You know, so yeah, tell me in the comments, God, tell me if you've had any experiences like these, or if you agree with me, if you don't agree with me even, and it is just me being a bit of a negative Nelly. It might even make me feel better if you're all like, nah, you're talking bollocks, mate. You just you know, got to look on the bright side and all that. You know, I would say you could even dislike the video if you don't like it, but you can't anymore, because YouTube have pretty much disabled dislikes, making the like button obsolete as well, really. Which is another thing I hate, like. And YouTube did that under the guise that it's for our mental health. We're worried about the mental health of our YouTubers. No, you're not. You're like, blatantly, Disney and all these big studios have lobbied you to hide the dislikes button, because it's bad PR for them when they upload something that looks crap and everyone dislikes it. So that's why they've disabled it, because money talks, sadly. Even though it was us who built YouTube, us regular YouTubers, money talks, and mainstream media, which is dying, is now trying to take over YouTube, which is really frustrating. But now if I see a trailer for something that I don't like, I just write the word I dislike this, because I can't, you know, I still press the dislike button as well, but you know, no one can see it. And YouTube said, oh well, we did you know, a test with it, and once the dislikes weren't visible, no one used the dislike button. Well, no shit, of course they didn't. There's no point pressing a button that doesn't do anything. What does that prove? Yeah, it's once again just kind of the powers that be trying to take over and censor us, basically. It's just another form of censorship. How long until comments are disabled, or at least heavily monitored, so that if you say anything remotely negative, you know, maybe even the word I dislike, you know, the word dislike will be banned soon from videos, and it's ridiculous. And of course, I like getting more likes than dislikes on my videos. Of course I do. I don't want to be churning out content that nobody likes. But at the same time, one, it's completely unrealistic to think that everyone would like what I do. You know, I'm not that up my own arse that I think everyone should just love what I do. Of course there are going to be people that don't like it. That's completely natural. It would almost be odd if I didn't get any dislikes, because I can't expect the whole world to think I'm great and like what I do. You know, there's always going to be people who disagree, you know, disagreeing opinions, or just don't like, you know, my mannerisms and just things like that. That's just life. That's just natural. Can't hide from it. And the thing is, users, you know, content creators on YouTube, you can disable dislikes yourself anyway, but it also disables the likes. And Disney and all these big corporations, they don't want to disable the likes. They want all the praise and admiration. They just don't want the dislikes. So we'll just disable the dislike button, but keep the like button so we can still have all that admiration. And it really shows what an echo chamber these people are in. You'd think as a company that they would want the constructive criticism. I, as a YouTuber, want constructive criticism. If I'm doing something that people don't like, I'd like to kind of hear about it, as long as you're not saying, ah, you dickhead, you know, just being an arsehole about it. You know, if you could like constructive criticism, I'll take it on board. But these big businesses now, they're just so arrogant that they don't want to hear it. They just want the praise. And hopefully it will lead to more of them losing money. Because if you're not going to listen to the customer and you're not going to listen to constructive criticism, then you're not going to have the ability to improve your product that you are selling. As much as I love Christmas, outside of that I cannot wait for winter to end. It just gets dark so early. 4 o'clock, it's getting dark now, Christ. See, it's now only 4:30 and it's already pretty much pitch black. Got my LE searchlight with me. I don't think I've ever used this in a video before. Quite a good light, can't really see it because I'm actually using it for light, but it's got a regular light on one side there, a kind of red flashing emergency light on the other side, and then the front is a spotlight. Very nice little torch, rechargeable, doesn't use batteries or anything. Be interesting this year to see if the government have the balls to try and implement another lockdown after it came out recently that last Christmas, when we were all told we can't see loved ones, can't go to parties, can't even go to funerals, they were all having the jollies up at least twice. So if they try and have another lockdown now, surely no one's going to pay attention to it. And the thing is, I'm not flippant about COVID. No, I've complained a lot about these kind of silly restrictions that don't make sense, and now you know, the government taking the piss with lockdown and that, even though they ignored it themselves. But I had pneumonia a couple of years ago, and at the time I was incredibly fit and healthy, more than I am now. I had a really healthy diet, I was working out 4 or 5 times a week, no underlying health conditions or anything like that. But within a day of first feeling ill, I was bedridden, weak as a kitten. Could barely walk from one side of the room to another because I'd get so out of breath. And so I wouldn't want to risk getting another infection to my lungs that would affect me the way pneumonia did, because even with no underlying health conditions, being really fit and healthy, that just kicked my ass, and I ended up being rushed to hospital in an ambulance, hooked up to oxygen and a drip. So you can't be too flippant with your health just because you've got no underlying health conditions. You kind of think, oh, you know, I trust my immune system to do its job, a lot of people say. But just from my own experience, you know, just because it's called the immune system doesn't mean it's literally going to make you immune to anything. You just don't know sometimes. So I definitely wouldn't want to take my chances with it. But had I not had pneumonia a few years ago, I probably would have been more flippant about it and thought, yeah, I'm young, fit, healthy, I'll be fine. But yeah, not being able to breathe properly and having to be hooked up to oxygen, being in hospital, because I was dying, basically. My body just could not fight off the pneumonia, and I would have died had I not had the medical intervention. So, you know, it's a really scary experience and unpleasant, so I would not want to risk that. But at the same time, I think society's kind of a bit mental with all these rules and restrictions, all these stores. And I guess shops do it because they're afraid of getting sued. They don't want the bad PR of a COVID outbreak coming from their store. So they have all these silly restrictions. I think part of it's just to placate people as well, just to make people feel better. Like, oh, there's you know, they've got these rules and they've got arrows on the floor and an entrance and an exit. So that will keep me safe. And it's just a way to kind of trick people into going shopping, basically, into feeling safer than they are, even though most of these restrictions these shops put in place are meaningless, like the ones I described earlier that I've encountered. Got the fire going a bit now, so I've got the kind of nice orange glow from that. I've only got a small fire because it's not that sheltered here now. That's one of the things with winter camping, because all the leaves are off of the trees, you haven't got as much cover, so it's harder to not be seen. So I've only got a small fire going. It's actually really mild, luckily. Last week it was absolutely freezing, but this week, luckily, it's really mild now. So it's actually quite nice just sitting out here. Don't even really need the fire at the minute, though bearing in mind, like I say, it's only like 4:30 time, 4:45. Another thing I've experienced that I kind of went back to briefly in lockdown was social media. Normally I don't have any social media apart from YouTube. I have got an Instagram that's connected to my YouTube, but I've forgotten the password, so and I can't log into it, and Instagram won't let me delete it without logging in, so it's just this kind of pointless Instagram now that I have some camping photos on. But otherwise I don't normally use social media, but I went back on it briefly last year when we were in lockdown and I was bored and that, and It's the same bullshit as before, really. It's just so much fakery on there. You know, there's a big thing now about how you can't trust mainstream media, which I agree with, but just because mainstream media does lie doesn't mean everything they say is a lie, and just because mainstream media lie, it doesn't mean that everything alternate forms of media or social media or whatever say is true. You know, it's just bullshit everywhere. Just examples from that I've known on social media that I'll tell you about are kind of funny. One was a girl I was seeing at the start of 2020, and she's got a fitness Instagram page, and she has thousands of followers who all aspire to be like her, or the men probably fancy her or whatever, you know, because she posts pictures of herself. She's a pretty girl, and she posts pictures of herself at the gym with all her trendy gym wear on, looking really toned and lean and muscular and fit and healthy. But actually in person, she was just kind of malnourished. Like, one thing that stood out to me was when I put my hand around her waist, it was like an empty sack of air. It was really strange. I've never experienced that before. It was actually quite off-putting. And she had no food in her kitchen other than some protein bars that she'd been sent to her, because she gets, you know, protein bars and shakes and trendy gym wear and all that sent to her by companies, because her fitness Instagram is quite popular, you know, so they send that stuff to her for marketing. But it's all bullshit. She's basically just a bit malnourished, and I'd say kind of unhealthy. But because she's quite slim, she's able to go to the gym in all her trendy gym wear, kind of tense up, make herself look like she's lean and muscular and fit and healthy, take some photos, post them on Instagram, and it made her look like some kind of fitness guru. It's all bullshit. Another girl I knew of, you know, I met her once through friends or whatever. I don't really know her that well, but she's got a popular Instagram as well, where she has thousands of followers, and, you know, everyone's telling her how beautiful she is. All the women want to look like her, and all the men want to be with her. And she does look very fake in her photos. You can tell she's had lip fillers and a boob job and all this stuff done, but she still looks, you know, sort of pretty. In that, you know, if you're fine with girls looking a bit fake, she does still look pretty in her pictures. But in person, one, she's not as slim as her pictures make out. She's not fat, don't get me wrong, but she's just not this perfect hourglass figure that her pictures suggest, that have been photoshopped to hell and back. And her face, she's had so much surgery on her face, she nigh on looks kind of freakish. And I kind of felt sorry for her, because she must have spent thousands on this surgery, and yet still she's so insecure about her appearance, she has to Photoshop her pictures to be almost unrecognisable. She might as well get Pixar to come in and just like animate her to put on her Instagram, because their pictures are so photoshopped and fake. But still, you know, people go on there and they, you know, she has thousands of admirers all thinking she's beautiful and wanting to be like her or be with her or whatever. And once again, it's all kind of fake. That Gabby Petito case that I mentioned briefly earlier, they were a couple who would go on social media posting their travels and looking like they're having this perfect life, when behind the scenes actually they were not right for each other at all, and fighting and being physically violent with each other, and then ended up with, you know, a murder-suicide. And I knew another girl a bit like that, who she was an ex-girlfriend of mine's best friend, and she would every day post pictures, almost every day, of her and her boyfriend, and saying, "Oh, I'm so lucky, I'm so in love, oh, I can't believe, I can't imagine my life without him," you know, stuff like that, which ordinarily I find a bit cringy. Maybe I just have no romance in my soul, but I just, people who sort of almost like they're trying too hard with all that kind of mushy stuff online, no, it makes me cringe a bit. Like I say, maybe I just got no romance in my soul. But it turned out once they split up that actually they had quite a bad relationship, and a nigh on, you know, bordering on abusive relationship. Not physically, but kind of, you know, with it arguing all the time and being nasty to each other. And basically he would push her to post these pictures every day just to stroke his ego, to make him look like he was this perfect boyfriend. And she went along with it as well. You know, she just as much as he did, she wanted everyone to think that she had this perfect relationship. Sorry, it's getting a bit dark. I'll put the torch on. Fire's going down a bit. But yeah, she went along with it because she wanted everyone to think she had this perfect relationship as well. But rather than split up with him, posting to make it look like she had this perfect relationship to kind of show off to people was more important to her. And so many people on social media are like that, where they're more concerned with how life looks rather than how life feels. and they're living for other people. They're living for how they look to other people rather than their own happiness. And not everyone, but in my experience, the people I've known who are in really happy relationships, they don't post much on social media about how in love they are. Oh, I'm so lucky, blah, blah, blah. Because they're too busy out enjoying themselves. They're too busy just being in love and getting on with life. So you really can't believe everything you see on social media. All these people who look like they've got these perfect lives and perfect relationships, very often is not real. And that's why I prefer video over pictures. That's why I prefer YouTube over sort of Instagram or Facebook or whatever, because I think it's harder to lie in videos. Obviously you still can, but when you think of a picture, it's literally a split second of someone's life, and yet people can post all these pictures making it look like they've got this perfect life and that they look perfect and they've got the perfect partner, but it's literally all you're seeing is this split second of their life, which really tells you nothing actually, and yet people put a lot into pictures. Whereas with video, I think you can get a more genuine feel of someone, and I think it's harder to lie in a prolonged way in videos the way it is in a split second photograph. Quite a lovely moon tonight, you can just see there through the branches. Really lovely evening. Looking forward to Christmas. I'm not a religious person whatsoever, I'm not Christian or anything like that, but I do think Christmas is a very important time of year, just to help everyone through the winter. You know, they've got the darkest month of the year. So we can get everyone's getting the decorations and the lights up. It just cheers everyone up, it just perks everyone up. I think it's good for mental health for the most part. I know there's a thing about, you know, I think there's more suicides over Christmas than other times of year. So there are negatives, it can make people feel lonely in that. But I think in general it does a lot more good than harm in, like I say, brightening up the dark winter month of December and helping to get us all through it. That's why it kind of annoyed me. There was talk, I think it was only a few people who said this, but some people were saying, oh, you know, we should have less Christmas lights because of global warming, to use less energy in that. But I think that would do more harm than good. And I think Christmas is very important. And the thing is, Christmas lights don't use that much electricity. My electricity company gave me one of these smart meter things, which maybe I just don't get the point of it, so someone can correct me on this, but I found it completely and utterly useless, because it's a device that you plug in, and it basically tells you when you're using electricity. Like if you've got the washing machine on, it will say, oh, you're using more electricity now that you've got the washing machine on. And it's like, well, no shit. Like, why do I need another device plugged in to tell me that when I have electronic devices turned on, they use more electricity? Like, I know. I don't get what smart meters are for. Maybe, am I doing something wrong? Am I missing the point? Someone tell me. But the funny thing is, leisure items like TV and computer and that, like my screen, TV screen, I watch DVDs on, computer I go on, barely used any electricity. It's only the essentials like washing machine, kettle, hob, cooker, that's when it goes up. But they're kind of things you can't really do without. So once again, I found it just a bit useless to have another device plugged in to tell me the obvious. Oh, fire's going nicely now. I do like a nice orange glow from the fire on the camera. Got the fire contained in the stove because, like I say, I don't want one that's too big. So just a nice little controlled fire to light the night and give me a little bit more warmth. I got some gymnastics rings that I thought would have been good to bring out here and hang from a tree so I can do some exercises on those, but I couldn't be bothered to bring them out with me today. But I actually haven't found a good tree to hang them from anyway, because I really need a tree with a good strong branch going out to the side to hang them from, so that if I'm sort of hanging upside down on them, the branch isn't going to break and I'll fall and break my neck. But I used to do gymnastics about sort of 7 or 8 years ago, and I was always pretty good on the rings, and they're actually quite fun to play around on. And there's quite a few exercises you can do on them, sort of press-ups and dips and things like that. So that would be something fun to do in a future video, if I can find a decent branch around here to hang them from. Right, sadly, I've run out of memory on my SD card. It just ran out. I've actually had to delete some footage, unfortunately, just so I can say a quick goodbye. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, thanks for watching. And hopefully see you all again soon. Hopefully you're all going to have a good Christmas. And like I say, let me know your thoughts on what I've been talking about this evening. Let me know what you think. I've got to leave early tomorrow morning anyway, because I've got an appointment at the hospital. Nothing serious, just dermatologist because of psoriasis. So it would have been a bit of a rush doing some filming tomorrow morning anyway. But yeah, I must have babbled on a lot because it doesn't seem like I filmed that much, and the SD card's full. So it'd be interesting editing all that together. All right, yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and have a good Christmas.